It is a pleasure and a privilege to be here with you. And in the brief time I have, I want to talk to you about the power of untapped knowing. And I'd like to do so through telling you a story about one of the most dominant, most captivating, and what some people might say one of the most controversial sports figures of the last 20 years. And no, this is not a football player, it's not a basketball player, it's not a tennis player, it's not even a boxer. It is a golfer. That's right, Tiger Woods. Now, some of you who are sports fans may know of Tiger's story, its ups and downs, but I'd like to take us back to the early years, back to 1996, when he began his professional golfing career at the tender age of 20, already a three-time defending national amateur champion. In the first 12 months of his career, he won on what some call golf's biggest stage, the Masters tournament. And to say that he won that major is a bit of an understatement. He completely overwhelmed the competition. He won with the lowest four-day score and the highest margin of victory in the 84-year history of the tournament. And only 2 months later, he ascended to the #1 world ranking in his sport, the youngest and fastest to ever do so. And that year set off a tear that had not been seen prior and hasn't been seen since. In 7 years, he won 8 majors of the 24 he played in. He won 34 total tournaments, and he had a winning percentage of 27%. Stated otherwise, every 4 tournaments he played in, he won one. But with all of that greatness, he is not the hero or the protagonist of this story. The protagonist is a lesser-known figure, a gentleman by the name of Butch Harmon. Who's Butch Harmon, you might ask? He was Tiger Woods' coach during that 7-year tear, and actually also during the 3 years he won those amateur national championships. And Butch Harmon was entrusted with changing Tiger Woods' swing only months after that Masters victory. Many in golfing circles actually attribute Butch Harmon to Tiger Woods' meteoric rise. But here's the thing that's so interesting about Butch Harmon, is that compared to his young protege, Butch Harmon was relatively unknown and unsuccessful as a professional. He had a professional career that spanned only 2 years, 1970 to 1971, and he won a whopping total of 1 minor tournament. Now, if you're like me, you might be sitting there silently asking yourself, why would Tiger Woods put his legacy and livelihood in the hands of a lesser accomplished individual like Butch Harmon? And the answer is that Tiger Woods understood and accepted a little known and little discussed fact. We know more than we can tell. See, knowledge is an interesting thing, and it comes in different domains and dimensions. One dimension is what we call declarative knowledge, or know what. It's kind of basic book knowledge. Then there's procedural knowledge, or know-how, the accumulated skills and expertise that allows someone to do something smoothly and efficiently. But it's this third dimension or third domain of knowing, causal knowledge, or know why, that unlocks the potential of what we know. Now, causal knowledge or know why is not your motivation for doing something. It's not your purpose. It's what actually causes what you do to be fundamentally effective or ineffective. What's the cause of it? That's what causal knowledge is. And it has that power, if tapped, can unleash miracles. See, and knowledge in itself exists on a continuum. On one side of that continuum is what we call explicit knowledge, and it's right there on the surface. It's easy to describe, easy to get your hands on, easy to share with someone else. But on the other side of that continuum is what we call tacit knowledge, or tacit knowing. Causal knowledge is often in tacit form. And tacit knowledge is not at the surface, it's well beneath. Hard to see, hard to describe, hard to get access to, even for the possessor of it, and it's hard to share. causal knowledge that know why is often in tacit form deep within us. But what does this have to do with Tiger Woods and Butch Harmon? Here we are, just a couple months after the Masters, and they're sitting there looking at video footage of his performance, and they were confronted with an inconvenient fact. Tiger Woods, for as great as he was, as exceptional as he was not fundamentally sound. And in order to have consistent excellence, he had to change everything. So he trusted Butch Harmon to deconstruct and reconstruct his golf swing from the bottom up. He said, and what he recognized was that he needed access to expertise and insight greater than his own, as accomplished as he was, and that was represented in Butch Harmon. And with the changes that occurred, we saw Tiger Woods go from great to exceptional, from one of the best in the world to one of the best that ever played. Causal knowledge tapped what we know that we can't tell made a difference in the golf game. But causal knowledge can have a greater impact than just your private pursuits or professional interests. It also can impact institutions. I am an educator, and in education there's a few things that we can reliably stand on that can make a difference for kids. One of them is great principals. Now the thing about great principals is they're really hard to find. So what some school districts have done is they created their own principal training programs, eschewing universities building their own. And I had an opportunity to study and research 2 award-winning programs in award-winning districts. And what we found is those programs had some commonalities. They had a recruitment strategy to recruit the best and brightest aspiring principals. They had a year-long apprenticeship with a master principal. They had coursework that would result in a master's degree. And after taking dozens of interviews and analyzing thousands of documents, what our team found was that these programs were great at getting access to declarative knowledge, the know what. They were exceptional at getting access to procedural knowledge, the know how. But they could not tap and get access to causal knowledge. Much to the chagrin of the aspiring principals, many who articulated that not having access to that deep knowing led to performance setbacks and even professional shortcomings. So what can we take away from this story about Tiger Woods and Butch Harmon and from this educational experience? And I would say there's 2 things we can take away, what I would call a causal knowledge conundrum. You try to say that 3 times fast. Causal knowledge conundrum. And that if you don't overcome this conundrum, you'll have 2 things we'll have to deal with as a consequence. The first thing we have to deal with is that our ability to continuously improve will be undermined. Said simply, that if you don't know what fundamentally makes a practice successful or unsuccessful, your ability to get better will be happenstance and chance at best. And you'll be stuck at good or average or mired in mediocrity. The second consequence, if we don't overcome this causal knowledge conundrum, is that we'll never have an impact greater than ourselves. I go back to the education example. In interviewing master principals in these programs, we ask them, what is it that you do that makes you a master at your craft? And they humbly had to sit back and say, I don't know. They didn't know what made them great. And so what they told their aspiring principals, their young apprentices, just follow me. Follow me, watch what I do, and hopefully you'll catch it, and you'll see what you need to do. And most of the aspiring principals, laughed like you just did, and they didn't catch it. And they were so frustrated and disappointed because what they needed when they hit the job running, they didn't feel equipped to tackle. The program hadn't given them that access to what made them secretly effective. So how can you overcome these 2 potential consequences? 2 things I'd like to encourage you to consider doing today. One thing you can do, find an expert who's good at what they do. Be open, be humble, and be teachable. I'm going to say that again. Be open, be humble, and be teachable. We look at Tiger Woods. Tiger Woods, objectively, had no reason to listen to Butch Harmon. In 12 months, he already was much more accomplished than his older mentor. But what he recognized is the deep knowing, that expertise and insight that was deep within him, he couldn't get access to. He needed Butch Harmon. So although he executed up here, he humbled himself to say, I'll receive from you. I'll be pliable. It's a lesson we all can receive. The second thing you can do, especially if you consider yourself a master at your craft, is to, and I want you to write this down, I want you to give yourself time, space, and permission to reflect. Oftentimes, what we get caught up in is the doing. Some of us forget we're human beings, we're not human doings. But we get caught up in that we get rewarded, encouraged, and some of us feed off of executing at a high level. But when we ask these master principles, what they said is, I never made time to ever think about what I did. It wasn't that they were poor professionals or they weren't thinkers. They just never slowed down enough to reflect on what made them great. I want to encourage you today to consider going down the road and taking a journey into your treasure trove of deep knowing. Because just perhaps, what you know but cannot tell could be someone's answer. What you know but could not tell could change someone's life trajectory. And perhaps what you know but could not tell could very well be the answer we need to change the world. Thank you.